All right, for more on this, let's bring in Professor Tafadzwa Mabhaudhi, Professor of Climate Change, Food Systems and Health, London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Prof, a very good afternoon to you. What in the main is behind KwaZulu-Natal's adverse weather patterns and conditions that has resulted in these series of natural disasters that we're seeing in the past, particularly this year? I mean, are there any specific climate patterns in the country that make these events even more severe?
Good afternoon. So KwaZulu-Natal, by its geography, its location and its topography, is prone to these weather extremes, mostly because of the influence of coastal weather systems on the province, but also its hilly nature and having people mostly either in valleys or on steep hill slopes. So it is naturally prone to weather extremes. What climate change is doing is amplifying the intensity and, of course, the frequency of these weather extremes. And then we are seeing these disasters, or it then translates into the disasters that we have been seeing. I would say over the last 5 years or so, it has really intensified.
And to what extent then do you think this Climate Change and Sustainability Council that's been launched in KZN will assist, especially from a long-term planning perspective, on weather warnings and even disaster preparedness?
I think it's a good initiative by the provincial government, but it needs to be brought into alignment with the Climate Change Act, which was recently passed into law this year. And that Climate Change Act stipulates that provincial governments should establish a provincial climate change forum. And this is also in line with the Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act. So within that provincial climate change forum, which now has very clear or specific terms of reference established in the Climate Change Act, it also allows for the establishment of a technical structure, which then this Climate Change and Sustainability Council could become that technical structure that advises the Provincial Climate Change Forum. So ultimately, the effectiveness of these structures, these are all institutional arrangements, comes down to how well resourced they are. Do they have resources for them to function clearly? Is there capacity within government, provincial government itself, to then take up recommendations coming from the council and implement them? Is there sufficient budget and technical capacity to be able to implement these changes? So the challenge then comes into the space of implementation gaps, which is where things usually fall apart.
Absolutely. I mean, Prof, that was going to be my next question in terms of we always see these strategies and they look good on paper and the stakeholders do get buy-in, but will they actually be implemented? I mean, given the fact that there's been so much consultation, do you think that we'll actually see an implementation process that will ultimately assist here?
The Climate Change Act, as it has been, published or approved, does put in place some measures to support implementation, especially through the development of very clear adaptation goals and also the facilitation of climate finance. It does recognize that government on its own, both national and provincial, lacks adequate financial resources to address the issue of climate change adaptation and calls on broader participation from the public and civil society to increase access to climate finance. It calls for broader action across all stakeholders. So again, it says the right things, but the Climate Change Act itself is yet to come into full implementation, probably starting next year. A lot of key steps or operational documents that will inform how it is implemented are also still missing. The national adaptation goals are yet to be established. The framework for its implementation is yet to be established. How we are going to mobilize climate finance from the international community is yet to be really established. How those funds will flow down to provincial governments is also yet to be established. So right now, there's a lot of good intentions. But really what we need to start moving towards, especially in the year to come, 2025, is practicalizing these intentions. I would suggest that, we say charity begins at home. So we also need to start investing our own resources, our own finances, committing certain funds within the budgets, the existing budgeting frameworks, to address issues of climate change across all the sectors, so that we start building anticipatory action, we start building preparedness. We know for a fact that these extreme weather events are going to keep repeating themselves. So we need to start building that preparedness so that they don't always have to become then disasters when they occur.
Absolutely, Prof. And as you say, funding is the key, and it really is important. But thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. That's Professor of Climate Change, Food Systems and Health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, Professor Tafadzwa Mabhaudhi, there for us.